The purpose of the Rebellious Truth lecture recital series is to highlight the artist's experience and understanding of the traditional arts, so music, dance and or storytelling, in relation to societal concerns.
That brings me on to the Help Musician UK study, which some of you might be familiar with, which was taken in 2016 with over 2,000 musicians. And it revealed that 71.1% of the professional musicians surveyed said they experienced panic attacks and high levels of anxiety. And 68.5% said they experienced depression. The results felt quite shocking at the time for a lot of people and to me, but I also wasn't hugely surprised. I'd been studying music for 2 years at that point in my life, and I had felt before this study came out that there was a really strange, disproportionately large number of musician friends who were struggling with their mental health compared to my non-musician friends. I'm going to quickly read some of the factors that Help Musicians UK identified as leading to these statistics at the time. So I think there's just 10. Poor working conditions, including the difficulty of sustaining a living, antisocial working hours, exhaustion, and the inability to plan their time and future. A lack of recognition for one's work and the welding of music and identity into one's own idea of selfhood. People in the music industry needing to believe in themselves and their work, yet the unpredictable nature of the business often knocking that belief. Musicians being highly self-critical, but existing in an environment of constant critical feedback. The precarious and unpredictable nature of self-employed musicians' careers. Musicians having several different jobs as part of a portfolio career, and as a result, feeling as though they work 24/7 and can never take a break. The difficulty for musicians to admit to insecurities because of competition and wanting to appear on top of things. Family, friends and partners playing an important role in supporting musicians, but this also leading to feelings of guilt. And finally, musicians' working environments being sometimes antisocial and unsympathetic, with some people experiencing sexual abuse, harassment, bullying and coercion. So these were the points that Help Musicians released along with their statistics back in 2016. And so it just so happened that this study came out while I was at the RCS, and the opportunity just came up to undertake a minor research project. And being curious, I thought, I'll do a little something on this. The word count wasn't very big. And so I made a really simple questionnaire for musicians on SurveyMonkey. It was called 20 Questions for Self-Employed Musicians. And as part of the project, we had to write a hypothesis. How many people do you think will take the survey, and what sort of results do you expect? So I think I'd said I expected 40. I thought if I guilt trip everyone in my year into saying yes, and then share it on Facebook, and any musician pals, give them a little nudge, they might do it. But I had it up for 48 hours, and within that time received 1,000 and something very detailed responses from musicians from all over the world. This is just having shared it on my own Facebook page. And I know you're thinking they might be bots, but I don't think they were, because there was huge lengthy comments where people were pouring out their experience of mental health and well-being issues in the professional industry. So the first 20 questions were kind of tick box questions, and then at the end there was this further comments section where people really went to town on the issues they felt were in the music industry. And while I was gathering some notes for this talk, I actually found an email I drafted to my ex-lecturer Laurie here saying, "I'm so sorry, but the questionnaire has ended up getting over 100,000 respondents, and there's no way I can go through all of this by Monday. Could I have until Wednesday, please?" I still haven't been through them all. 10 years, almost 10 years later. But what I did take away from that, the biggest realisation was that, oh my goodness, there's musicians who are desperate to talk about this, and something is shifting. A lot of what people were talking about was about this culture of being afraid to speak of their mental health, of stigma in the scene, and it felt like a big shift was coming. And I think there has been a big shift. So my research continued through uni. The next year came the major research project, and I thought, oh, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, I'll carry on along this line. And so for that, I interviewed 12 professional traditional musicians in Scotland. And the recurring theme that came up over and over again was musicians feeling like they had to hide their mental health issues and struggles. And it was really hard to hear, actually, but it's what I ended up choosing to focus the final dissertation on. And the reasons that people gave for feeling this way really varied from person to person. There was lots of feelings of shame and guilt, that this is the most wonderful job in the world, and this feeling of guilt that they're struggling when they shouldn't be, because they're so fortunate to get to do what they do. There was also the stigma attached to the mental health issues, which I do hope is becoming less now. People were also afraid to take medication or get help in case it might dampen their creativity or ability to connect with music. And I use them sympathetically, because I do understand where some of them are coming from. Being perfectionists also came up over and over again, not wanting to come across as being anything but perfect. And the expectation of musicians to be upbeat and good crack also heavily featured in these interviews. How easy it can also be for them when they're on stage pretending to be feeling great and fine, just to carry that facade on when they get off the stage and are with their bandmates and friends after. My main memory of all of these interviews was that almost everyone I was speaking to was exhausted, and the culture of them bottling everything up was taking a huge toll on their lives. I've got a quote here from one of the musicians. It says, "This conflict between inside feelings and what you're portraying on the outside is harrowing. It's making things worse. It's like you're two people, and this creates a painful tug of war inside of you." There's also this outdated romanticism of the tortured artist that came up, and how it's okay to be suffering with mental health problems and almost to be expected. Also the factor of being away from friends and family so often and feeling too guilty that when in the short windows you do see them, that you want to just offload or ask for help. A lot of the musicians were also really high functioning. As part of the criteria to kind of keep in some guidelines, everyone I spoke to had a formal diagnosis from a GP or a mental health care practitioner with either clinical depression or anxiety. And so although all these people were being treated and had recently been diagnosed, they were exceptionally good at masking it and appearing to be carrying on as normal, even when I spoke to most of them. I have a quote from another musician, a brilliant instrumentalist, who does now speak openly about their mental health. She said during these interviews, "There comes a point where you've been this person for so long that to turn around and say, I'm not actually that person, I've never been that person. I've just been pretending. It's like I've been deceiving, and I don't want to be a deceiver, but I can't be honest now. After I left uni, I made a very random documentary about tracking down a half-brother in Germany, which is a whole other story, but it meant I met this lovely production company who knew, because when I was finding my brother, I was finishing this work off that I'd been researching mental health in musicians. And so they asked if I'd be willing to make a programme about it. And I said, thanks, but no thanks. I think I'm done with this for a little while. But I took a year on it and eventually said, oh, okay then. And so we filmed this hour-long documentary for BBC Alapa, which Laurie mentioned earlier, with a huge array of brilliant musicians who were so incredibly open about the problems they faced and the challenges they see in the music scene. And there were some common themes that I have through all of this research that come up again and again. The first one, I feel, is that creating art is hard. It can be a deeply vulnerable process. And as a professional musician, you're putting your innermost thoughts, emotions, and experiences into your work and then presenting them to the world. It can be a really scary process. And as you're opening yourself up to criticism, rejection, and failure, even if the roots come from such a friendly traditional culture like ours in Scotland. Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele. Estrim gwyym rinen nulen, estrim machinke, estrim mornio, anguk pan, nyulan ayer, samofasten sekanaher. Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele. Och, mochraach smolere, nuch gyrain mochese, vertounen schnalaie, tol de schielig falle. Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele, Babangosi sekelele. Thanks for singing as well.